Well, hello, Bravites, and welcome to another edition of Movie Reviews with yours truly, Toya. And on this evening, I will be reviewing the movie Queen and Slim. And this movie came out over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. It features, or stars rather, Daniel Kaluuya, who I believe wrote and presented the script to Lena Waithe, who presented the screenplay and was able to get the funding and everything to get this movie off of the ground. We have Jodie Turner-Smith, who played opposite him, and I assume she was Queen in the film. India Moore, who is a transgender actor, who is a non-binary, first of all, transgender actor. So you might hear me refer to him as he or she, but it doesn't offend him because he's a non-binary term user. So India Moore. And also Bokeem Woodbine is in the movie, who we know from classics like Jason's Lyric. He's an incredible actor. We haven't seen him a lot lately, but he is in this film, and we enjoyed him in this film. Also, Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers is in the film. So we see quite a few actors. There are plenty others as well, of course. But these are some of the main characters in the film. And Queen and Slim is basically a film about a couple that went on a date. It was sort of a blind date, not so much. They met on Tinder. They went out to dinner. After dinner, they're driving down the street. They're pulled over by a police officer on trumped up charges, basically. And the police officer begins to violate civil rights, and who I assume is Queen, since neither character was ever given a name during the entire movie until the very end, and neither of them were ever referred to as Queen or Slim. So I'm assuming that Queen is the female counterpart in the movie. She's a lawyer in the film, and she is having a hard time with their civil rights being violated. And so the police officer gets into a scuffle with who I assume is Slim, and things get out of control very quickly. They escalate. The police officer had already called in the license plate. He had already taken the license and the registration of Slim. And so everything's also caught on the dash cam. So they're already caught in the grips of this. And once a scuffle begins to occur between the police officer and Slim, a gunshot goes off. And Queen, of course, is grazed by the bullet. And so, out of fear and with adrenaline rushing, Slim grabs the gun, shoots the officer in self-defense. But before he knows it, things spin out of control madly because the officer, of course, is dead. And they decide, well, Queen, first of all, decides that they have to go on the run. And nothing is ever the same after that. Now, the decisions all the way up to this part, I could see happening. It's something that is very likely. It plagues the Black community. It's not something we're proud of. It's nothing we're proud of, nothing we're happy about, but it happens every day. Rarely, though, do we see where the police officers are killed or retaliated against, or even in self-defense. And so this was a different spin on a tale that we know all too well. However, we see Queen in the film, and first of all, she met Slim on the Tinder dating app. And she said that she went out with him because she felt sorry for him. He looked sad. And that was her reasoning. And that she needed something to do, something to get out, to get her head out of having lost a case or lost a client in a case. And so she decided to give him one date. She wasn't even planning on going out with him again. And after all of this happened, all of the trauma happened, they bonded over the trauma, the experience, and having to go on the run at her urging. And so they did so. I want to say that I've seen many opinions about the film, and many people sharing how much they love the film. It's one of their top favorites of the year or of all time. And to be honest, I was quite appalled and shocked by that, because my initial reaction was pure anger. I've only cried out of anger a couple times in my life, and after having seen this movie, that was one of the times. There are so many reasons why, and here they are. First of all, the movie was riddled with stereotypes. We look at Queen, and she was your typical angry Black woman. She had a nasty disposition most of the film. She emasculated who I assume to be Slim the entire movie. She called the shots. She told him what to do. And of course, this could be because she has legal prowess. But at the same time, she's literally taking the wheel. She's driving all the time. She's telling him what to do. She's, disrespecting his song choice or what have you at the time. And you can call me old fashioned or what have you, because I am. But I did see that this was something that was drawn out in the movie, and I less than appreciated it. That was one stereotype. Another was the father that they ended up encountering on their journey, on the run. So, first of all, if there's a nationwide manhunt on for you, there are just certain things that you are not going to do. One being stopping after you have carjacked a sheriff and put him in the trunk of a car to get food and eating it out publicly. That's just not something that you would do. But that is something, one of the nonsensical decisions that was made in this movie. And that was one of the holes that I feel like was never closed as well. Because if you are going to carjack a sheriff and put him in the trunk of another car, which is almost attempted murder at this point, because what if they never find him? What if it takes them a long time to find him? Whatever came of that, we don't know. All we know is he was left in the trunk of a car as they went to go get burgers with the cash that they stole from this sheriff, which is now compounding the charges of murder on a police officer. So at this time, when they realize they should be leaving because people are starting to recognize who they are because it's all over the news at this point, they run into a guy literally with a truck and hurt knee. And so the guy, is calling his son, fat. He's calling him a little nigga. He's calling him the B word. He's, referring to his mother as a B. He's referring to the woman that he's dating as a B. And, everybody's chuckling and laughing, but it's a very nasty image to have to project to an audience that will be probably a mixed audience. It's like we're airing our dirty laundry. And also, it's not something that we need to see or glorify or laugh about. It's something that I think is deplorable. But again, people didn't see a real problem with that. And I think that is one of the problems. Another issue that I saw in the movie is how there were 3 black officers depicted in the film. All of them were disrespected. The officer that initially made the arrest or tried to make the arrest on Slim, he respected him by calling him sir. He was patient with him. He was careful with his words. Queen got out and kind of pushed back, saying, "You're violating our civil rights. I'm going to be recording you, what have you." But the white officer was still respected in his role. Now, we run into another officer when Queen decides to go to her uncle's house. And her uncle, of course, is played by Bokeem Woodbine. India Moore being one of his, I guess, whores in his pimp house. And that was just another stereotype that did not sit well with me. But what have you. They lived in New Orleans and they went there. And one of the officers was a black officer. And he came to the house and he ended up seeing the truck. And he wanted to do a search of the home and ask questions about it. But he was challenged with having to go and get a warrant to do so, which is only right. Only right. That's the way it's supposed to go. However, I feel like the fear and reverence for the white officers was far different than it was for the black officers, being that the uncle ended up calling the black officer a nigga. He told him to make sure you close my gate. He was very snappy with him. He was somebody who had messed with or had sex with one of his prostitutes in the past. And he was asking him if that's what he wanted, if that's why he was coming back around. And he told one of the prostitutes in the house that he was going to have to kill that nigga one day. And again, everybody laughed. I thought it was deplorable. But that's just my perspective. Another instance was the uncle helped them burn the truck that they had stolen from the sheriff and gave them another car to continue their journey on to meet one of his army buddies who was flee from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who was going to hide them away and then give them directions to a friend of his who had a plane to help them flee to Cuba, with sort of the way that Asada Shakur did after she allegedly killed a state trooper in the 60s. And so on their quest to do that, the car breaks down on the road. So they have to go and get the car fixed at a shop. Used all the cash that her uncle had given her. And while they were asking questions to the auto mechanic that was fixing their car, who told them that he did not like what they had done, even though they were being celebrated widely for it, they went away with his son, and there was this nonverbal dialogue that happened a few times in the movie that was kind of weird. You would expect that kind of dialogue to be tied to a video montage later in the movie, so that the words or the phrases or the mindset at that time or whatever was going on could resonate. But that did not occur, and that was one of the holes that I felt like was happening. It was a weird shot. There were also shots in the film where it would be pitch black on the road daytime, and then you were hit with this burst of light from the sun, and I guess it was to shock your system into waking up, such as Queen and Slim might have done on the road. But it just didn't make sense for that to happen to me. The score was off. The music would be playing, but it just wouldn't flow well to me. But the son of the mechanic, going back, was one of those who celebrated Queen and Slim's decision and felt like they were heroes. And he wanted to be like them, kind of, and he asked them to, well, Slim asked the little boy to take a picture of them so that he could immortalize them. And so they became like these legends at that point. And then when they left the mechanic and their car was up and running, they went off, and Queen is driving at this point, and she decides to take a turn to visit her mother's gravesite. Her mother, by the way, is dead because her uncle killed her in a dispute over their home after the patriarch or matriarch of the family died. And so they're fighting over the house and the estate, which happens in black families or families, period, all the time. But the uncle in this instance kills her mother. She, being a new attorney, tries the case and gets her uncle off, and keeps him from going to prison. I'm not going to even talk about the conflicts that exist there where she would not have even been able to try that case, but what have you. So her mother is dead, and she visits the gravesite. She's never had a close connection with her mother. They never really have had a bonded relationship or never really loved each other the way that they should. So she breaks down and cries in this moment to Slim about that. And they go back to the car and indulge in some pretty heavy duty sexual activity that lasted a long time. And at the time that this sex is occurring, I want to say that the juxtaposition between the passion points was supposed to be the key at this point in the movie. So you're showing passion in sexual form, and you're seeing passion in raw emotional form in the way of a protest happening with the police. Back where the young man who was the auto mechanic's son was part of the protest. And he's angry, he's, you know, upset with everything that's going on, and the police begin to throw tear gas, the crowd disperses, but the young man decides he wants to take this moment to show who he is, to kind of be like Queen and Slim. And so he goes and he pulls a gun on an officer, and the officer that he coincidentally pulls the gun on is black. And so you see this black officer trying to talk the young man down, telling him to just go home, don't do this, you don't need to be out here, it's dangerous for you. And what happens? He's shot in the face and he's killed. And what happens to the young man? We find out eventually from Flea's character and his wife, the young man is also killed in that incident. And so as Queen and Slim are hiding out at Flea's house and the police are coming to get them, we see their houses getting bum rushed, and the Flea and his wife are sitting down to have dinner. And once they see the officers running up on the porch or the FBI or what have you, they tell them to run upstairs to their bedroom and get under the bed. Now, how they knew which bedroom to go to or to dig up the floorboards, to get under the floorboards and put them back neatly so that the police would not find them, I do not know. They never went on a tour of the house. They were never shown all of the hiding places in the house, although Flea told them they had plenty of hiding places in the house. And so I feel like this was another hole in the story that just did not make sense. And so the next day they get up, they decide to try to make a run for it. Jump from a second floor window. Queen's arm is knocked out of socket as Slim is trying to help her put it back in, as he's trying to steal the car from the garage to make a mad dash and get away. A black officer outside of the house somehow hears her cry from the garage, even though nobody else hears it. And so he's disrespected by his white counterparts, as it happens all the time, right? But he goes to look in the garage and finds that Queen and Slim are trying to make a mad dash. Instead of arresting them or trying to turn them in or having them run over another officer and adding more to their charges, the black officer lets them go. Hooray, right? Okay. So that's what we're thinking in our heads. However, what it shows is that black officers might not be able to be trusted and might not be able to perform and execute their duties well because they have a conflict of interest. So there's another dagger for you. Another thing that I saw in this movie is that when they were at Queen's uncle's house, India Moore's character was telling Queen that outside of the house, her uncle ain't as nobody thinks he is. He's only that in the house where he has his holes and he can live like a king. And the men tell each other they ain't as in the movie. And so what it tells us is that black women don't love black men don't love black men, white men don't love black men, nobody loves the black man. Is this an image that we need to see projected over and over again? Even though you might feel like it has some validity, I feel like it's dangerous and irresponsible to put that message out there. One of my final points about this film is that you see symbols of Christianity peppered throughout the entire movie. There's the necklace that Slim is wearing. There is a crucifix on the wall in the house. There are rosaries hanging from the car window. There is the Trust God license plate. You have Slim praying for a long time over his meal in the beginning of the movie. Queen, however, does not believe in God. So you have somebody like Slim, who does believe in God, being attacked and coming under this white man's rage or what have you, as he celebrates or loves what people deem a white Christ or white Jesus, white Savior, what have you. And so for that to be the narrative that everyone is agreeing with these days, and then to have this happen in this movie to the point that their mural is put on the side of a church wall at the end of the movie, kind of sends the message that as a Christian, your glory or your reward is only in your death. That is the only time that you can be celebrated or feel like your service to Jesus makes sense. I might be taking it a little far with that, but I feel like there was a message definitely being put out with all of the crucifixes and the Christian symbols, and then the way that this story ended up happening. But I'll come back to that. So at the ending of the movie, Queen and Slim finally make it to Florida to meet up with Flea's friend. I'm not sure his name in the film. Please forgive me. But to meet up with the uncle's friend who is Flea, and his friend that lived in Florida, to get the plane to fly them to Cuba so that they could be free from being chased down by the American police or FBI or what have you, and they could live in exile happily ever after. And so they're approached by a black man who they're leery of at first. And when the guy comes to their car, he has a gun in hand. And they're like, why should we trust you? And he's like, well, you're looking for the stewards, right? And then they're like, yeah. And so he's like, well, what other choice do you have? You have to trust me. And so he takes them to his trailer because he lives in a trailer park, right? Um, and it's only right that he lives in a trailer park. And he makes the call that they want the flight. And they go with him, and he says that he calls in the flight. He takes them to where they think they're going to meet the friend to get on the flight to Cuba. And as soon as he drops them out and they're walking towards the airplane, the police are right on their heels, and story over, right? There's no happy ending here. We know that it's not going to end well. So they turn around and they face the police, and the police are yelling at them to get down now. And, Queen is like, please don't ever let go of my hand. And this ties back to some conversations that they had previously in the film. And they're going over what they need to do and how they need to love each other regardless of time. And he tells her that you are already my legacy, and she turns back to him. And as she turns back to him, one of the officers decides to shoot her dead in the heart, unprovoked. She's not armed. Of course she has killed a cop already, but she's not armed. And they shoot her in the heart. Slim at this point, because they bonded over such a traumatic event, which kind of speeds up the bond between people, is broken. He's in tears. He reaches down to pick up her lifeless body, and he begins to walk towards the police. Instead of rushing him, pinning him to the ground, they began to obliterate him and her corpse with bullets. And story over. No happy ending. Now, what I would have liked to see, if I had to see an alternate ending for this film, would have been to see Slim take out a gun, shoot her in the head, shoot himself in the head. Murder, suicide, nobody gets the victory. The sting is gone for them. But that's not what happened. And so, we see this ending, which is heartbreaking, which is gut-wrenching, and all of the above, right? What I did not like about that, besides the obvious, is that so now we have both of them dead. We see Slim never seeing his family again, which is one thing he was really worried about when they first went on the run. And we did see a loving father in his home. His father answered the phone when Slim finally got a chance to call him, and he hung up before the FBI could trace the call. Of course, they don't need that nowadays. You can easily cross-reference a phone number, find out what state they're in, what location they were at, and go there, or have people on the ground, boots on the ground. But the father did tell the FBI, I don't care if you are going to arrest him, you're not going to do it with my help. So you saw a loving, happy home, kind of, that Slim was from. But he still ended up in this reckless situation that was no fault of his own. And it just ended on such a bad note. And like I said, no one had a name the entire movie. They were not referred to as Queen or Slim the entire film. But they did get names after their deaths were reported on the news, and people lined the streets with the Black Panther power fists in the air. And that was just the way that it ended. It was on a very sour note. And then we see the guy that was supposed to be a friend, because he was dropping them off to the plane, counting money at the end to indicate that he was the one who had sold them out to the police for a reward. Okay. Let's find the hole in that, why don't we? Okay, so this guy comes to the car and knows the name of the family that these two are looking for, and takes them to the plane, or a plane that they think is going to get them out of the country. Even if the plane was not the real family or the connection that they were supposed to make, how did this guy know who to put this couple into connection with in order to gain their trust? If Flea did not sell them out and their uncle did not sell them out, how did this occur? If it makes no sense. Flea and his wife would have either profited monetarily, just like the guy who sold them out did, or someone else, we would have seen them in cahoots. But it just does not make sense. There was a major hole in that story, in that we don't know how this guy knew who to put them into connection with, and how he knew to bring them to the airpad or to the airport. And so it just didn't make sense. The whole thing was just off. And to me, it's reckless and irresponsible to put a movie like this out, knowing the kind of climate that we are in. It's not going to garner any action. It's not going to garner any real attention. It's not going to garner any sympathy. And so what is our goal with this movie exactly? Why is it that no one sees a problem with it? The problem is that no one sees a problem with it. But there were so many issues in this movie. I can't even count them. I don't have enough time. I'm already talking to you for well over 20 minutes. And I've only scraped the surface. So I hope that once we look at movies like this, we begin to really dissect and think about what we are watching, what we are ingesting, what we are telling ourselves we are worth, what we are telling ourselves that we expect, and raise the bar on that. Because only more movies like this, only more slave movies are going to be made to perpetuate what they think you are, who they think you are and the devaluement of your person. Please, I beg of you to really think critically about what you're watching, what you're ingesting, what you're putting in your ear gates, your eye gates, and make a conscientious decision to do better. As a black person, as my people, we got to do better. That is my review. If I have to give it a spotlight, I would not. I am able to give it 0 spotlights because this is my rating system. I don't give it a rating at all. It's a 0 rating for me. I don't recommend it. I know many people have seen it. Many people love it. But I urge you, it behooves you to think critically about what you're watching, please. This has been another review with Chicago Bravo.